And we're back, Stripe Show Podcast, special one on a Monday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Today's podcast brought to you by About Golf Simulators, glowing in the backdrop, ready to go for another full week of lessons. I've been busy last 2 weeks in August. I would say as busy as I've been in August. Golf is humming right now. And it's cool to see people enjoying the sport, getting out, even in the heat. I played golf here in Jacksonville, actually on Saturday. Good friend, birthday, 97 degrees, humidity. It was hot, to say the least. I don't know if it was as hot as it was in Memphis. Looking at Lucas Glover coming down the stretch with swamp ass to get his second win in 2 weeks. Amazing. Lucas Glover, back-to-back wins. And it's only fitting that the big difference in that for Lucas, of course, has been the putter. He's turned it around. And we got a guy that knows a thing or two about putting, as promised, the inventor of Tour Read Golf and all things golf instruction. We're going to get into even more than reading a green today with the one and only Ralph Bauer. How are you?
Travis, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Very well. And yeah, it was very hot in Memphis. We had a great time, but wow, it was smoking hot.
Yeah, it's, I know that's where FedEx is, and I know they're sponsoring it, and I know they want to have the first round there in Memphis right there in the backyard, but man, I am not so sure that's the right decision in the middle of August, the first round of the playoffs, to make this thing feel big, to make it look the way you want to look. I don't know. That's for another day. But Lucas Glover, let's just start with him before we get into all this other stuff, which I'm excited about. And I really appreciate you taking the time because I know you've been on the road. I know you got in late last night from Memphis, so I appreciate you getting up and taking the time. But when you look at Lucas Glover and you look at this long putter and you look at what he's doing, the turnaround that he has made in the last 2 or 3 months is really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know what? I never told you this, but I caddied for Lucas Glover at Bay Hill one year, and I worked with him on putting for about a year. Kind of got him back to about average for that year. Like he was, an average putter. Great guy. Obviously, he just worked really hard. He's talented, and it's great to see him turn it around. One of the things he told me one time, never forgot this. We were doing a practice round at the Players Championship. I said, Ralph, golf is easy until you start trying, right? And so we had a little chat about that Monday this week, and he said, wow, like everybody thinks I'm smarter now. I'm like, yeah, Lucas, like I've been using that line now all the time, like the last couple of days after you won. So, it's fun to see him win. It was a very, very popular win. Both of them were, on the PGA Tour. And, it's just a remarkable turnaround. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. He had the yips, and kind of the flinch and those things, which I know you come across from time to time. And it really is just trying to find something that takes that out, right? That takes that flinch out, maybe creating this whole new chapter for the mind, whether it's a whole new setup, a whole new grip. We've seen a number of things work, but it's all about just creating that situation where that yip or that flinch comes out, and then all of a sudden you can start to build a little bit of a rapport with that. And with Lucas now, even when he doesn't make a putt, it's not that he flinched or any of that. It was just that he maybe misread it, or it was just not a great stroke. So is that kind of the gist for those listening that, man, I have the yips. I've got to create something that gets that yip out no matter what it is.
Yeah, we're lucky with putting with the yips because there's a lot of different options. And you can go long putter, you can go left-hand low, you can go traditional. There's a lot of options. More demanding, if somebody's got an issue like that with the full swing, because we just don't have as many options with the driver to change it up. But Lucas did a good job. He went to a completely different style of putting. Went with a long putter. I feel like he was hesitant to do that for a while just because he's such a traditionalist. But if you got I don't know, $4.5 million, almost $5 million last 2 weeks, that'll that'll take care of some of those thoughts on not being as traditional as you'd like.
Yeah, you look at the Wyndham where he won. Lucas Glover style, he goes positive 9.1 approach, positive 3.8 off the tee. I mean, Lucas can strike it. We know that he's a flusher, but then he goes positive 4.9. Yeah. All right. So, his putting was good. Now at FedEx, he didn't even hit it that good for Lucas. I mean, he was positive 0.9 and positive or off the tee approach positive 2.5. And those are pretty low numbers for Lucas Glover, but yet positive 3.1 putting. So you could almost make the argument that Lucas won that tournament in Memphis with the short game and the putting, which is scary because we know what he can do with the ball striking. All right, let's move on. I had Marcus Potter on, great coach, works out of the studio here. He works with Lee Hodges, who won the 3M Open, and Marcus was telling me about you and Tour Reed. He introduced it to me probably 6 months ago, and him and I stay in touch, of course, and then when Lee won, I could see the difference in the putting, and he really, really gave a lot of credit to Tour Reed or Tour Reed Golf. And you can look at it on Instagram at Tour Reed Golf. There's an app at Tour Reed. We're going to talk a lot about it here today. And I've learned a fair amount about it as well. And you're going to come down to Jacksonville in November when the tour comes through, and we're going to do a school here for those that are listening. And if you want to be a part of it. But this greens reading, right, is fascinating, and how much further along the industry has come, Ralph, in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years. I can remember when I got into teaching, and when I first started teaching in 1999 and 2000, and coaches kind of saying, all right, here's how we're going to read it. We're going to kind of look up here, and we're going to look down here, and this side's higher than that, and so it's going to break this way. It wasn't real sophisticated, right? And you were using your eyes, and you would make a judgment. Okay, I'm going to play it here and hit it, and then if I misread it, I really couldn't quantify what I did wrong or what I got right. And so we're so much further along than that. AimPoint Golf has come along, I think, has done a lot of great things, and really furthered our education. And now your system, Tour Reed Golf. So let me start with this. Tell us a little bit about Tour Reed Golf, and then we're going to get into some of the players that are using it that are having a lot of success as well. But tell us about Tour Reed and how maybe it's different than, say, AimPoint.
So basically what we did is, I coached on the PGA Tour for about 15 years. I had all these secrets. I took a break during COVID, came back, started working at a club. I was giving a golf lesson to an engineer. You always ask people what they do for a living. If they're kind of artsy, you go a little bit more in that direction. But he's an engineer, so I got pretty high tech with him. And taught him how to read greens. In a pretty simple manner that I developed over the years on tour. He's like, wow, it can't be that simple. I'm like, yeah, that's it. He's like, wow, we should turn this into a app and into a whole green reading system. We had some time on our hands, so we did that, which has been amazing. We've got it in the App Store. Basically, what it is, it's a way to train your green reading, right? So it's a cool system. Travis, you're right about that. Other systems, I'm sorry, the rest of the game we've got figured out. We can fit somebody for a driver. We can talk about their launch angle. We can talk about the spin rates, speed. We can figure all that out. With putting, up till now, it's a lot of guesswork and really not much of a system where you can hang your hat on. And we mentioned it before, but if statistically speaking, people that have played for a few years really don't get better at putting. And we're trying to take the variables out. I feel like people will miss a putt and they don't know if they mishit it. They don't know if they misread it. They're just going to, make or miss the putt, go to the next hole, guess on the read, make or miss it. If they miss it right or left, they automatically think it's a push or a pull. Almost nobody ever defaults to, hey, I under or overread that. So basically we just try to develop a very, very streamlined system to train people's green reading, which has been amazing. I've personally taught to over 600-700 people and had overwhelming success from tour players to 30 handicaps. So it's been super fun as a golf coach to actually help people with what up till now has been a big, big problem for people to a big hurdle for people to overcome.
So without giving the secrets away, right? Because you got to go to the app, and you definitely want to go through the nuts and bolts of this and the certification, get dialed in on exactly how this works. But so without giving that completely away, talk about some of the factors, if you could, that go into making a more calculated, educated decision on which way it's going to break and how much.
So basically what we've done is we've taken the three symbol in your iPhone. You know, let's say you've got a 5 footer. Let's say you've got to set up some tees around a hole, pick a pretty decent slope. You got a 5 footer. You put your phone down. You put your phone case down 2/3 of the way to the hole. Click on it. It'll give you the slope of the ground and tell you where to aim your putt. So it's a great way. It's a great way to start with the system, because most people are like, wow, that breaks 5 inches. I would have guessed 2.5, right? And then they're recognizing that they're hitting it, you know, after a few loops around, they're starting to trust it. And then from there, we have systems in the app to wean you off the app and take it out onto the golf course, like Lee Hodges does, you know, in PGA Tour events. But I've got 50, 60 people at my club using the same system from 30 handicappers down. So, you know, I did quite a bit of testing on this when it first came out, and I would go up and, you know, use the app against tour players. You know, I picked on tour players because they were all my friends, and I was out there anyway. So I thought, hey guys, let's see how you guys are. And you know, the average PGA Tour player I tested on a left to right putt only recognized 70% of the break. So if it was going to be a 10-inch break, they would guess 7, right? And then hopefully over the years they learned to pull their left to righters, and they would make a fair number of them. But boy, it's tough as a coach to say, yeah, just underread it and hope to hit a bad putt, and you know it might go in. So, you know, it's been fun to train people with their green reading. You know, a couple quick success stories. Nick Taylor, you know, won the Canadian Open, which is amazing. He was him and Mac Hughes were the first 2 players to get it. They, you know, when we were beta testing it, they were the first 2 tour players. Nick put the app down. It's like, wow, that can't be, first time. So wow, that can't be right. But I'll trust Ralph. Hits it, went in. He's like, oh, that's weird. After about 10 repeats on that, he's like, wow, actually the app's right and I've been wrong, right? So it's just been fun to help people read greens better and take so much of the guesswork, and just give people a, you know, in the app there's it's you know, as a golf coach, I wanted to develop a training system. So the app is a training system. It's got practice plans in there. It's got drills in there, and it's also got, and you know, it's also got a training system, like a encore system that, like I say, that Lee Hodges uses, that tons of college players are using now, that, you know, LPG, everybody, you know, and it's helping them read greens much better on the course.
All right. So when you download the app and you go through this and you set it down and it's telling you which way to break, are you entering in like how far you are, the slope direction? Like, because we know that there's a distance factor of how far the putt. We know that there's slope direction. Obviously, we have to figure out which way the slope's going. Yeah. But then the severity of the slope. The severity of the slope is so important to get right. The speed of the green. I mean, these are the factors that go in. And so you have to have some sense of that, right? And then from there, the app kind of helps you figure that out and how much.
Yeah. So all you have to do is enter the number of feet the putt is. Put the app down, and the phone is going to tell you the slope of the ground, and it's going to tell you where to aim it. You have to enter in the green speed. 10's kind of a nice number for people to start on. Once you go through it, you know, we like to equate it to you know, tour events or let's say a club championship. But 10's kind of a standard number. 11 would be kind of quick. 9 would be kind of slow. Yeah. So you enter the green speed. You just have to put the number of feet in. So if you got 9 footer, you toggle it to 9 feet. set the phone down. It'll tell you the slope and tell you exactly aim it. Like I said, and that's a starting point. I know it's kind of crazy. When I first, we spent all this time developing it. I got it on my phone. I took it out to a green. I put it down. I had a perfect putter. First one went in, second one went in, third one went in, fourth one went in, and I was just looking around, going, "Wow, this is insane!" Like we figured out how to read greens, now. So it's pretty exciting. And
so really quick on that. So with the phone, okay, so you're putting in the feet. It's the phone is calibrating slope, direction, severity of slope.
Yeah.
And then you have to put in the speed, and then all that configuration comes out. And so you're using your phone to kind of get a sense of that. But then like the second phase, as I understand, and as I see some of the players doing, is then it turns into just like a simple equation, right? Like they're pacing it off, and it turns into an equation in their head that they can do and then aim it.
Yeah. So the first step is using the phone and using the app to give you the read. The next step, we call it hide to a read, where it will tell you the slope of the ground, but it won't give you the answer on where to aim it. You estimate it, click on it, it'll give you the answer. So it's kind of a way to wean yourself off of it. And then we've got a system that's super simple. Basically, we're using a baseline read. And I always tell people that there's a little bit of math involved. Like Lee did a good job of talking about this after he won. There's a little bit of math involved. You have to know your 2 times table. So if somebody knows, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 7 is 14, they'll be good to go. And it's a super simple system to do it. It might be a little complicated to do it here, but in the app there's a couple good videos, explaining it. And basically everybody that goes through, I did a clinic last week, and 5 of the people said, this is great, Ralph, great clinic, but we learned all this in the app last night. We downloaded it last night and learned all this in the app. Like, okay, well, they still had to hear my jokes and stuff, so that was worth the price of admission. But but no, it's been So if there wasn't a system you could use on the golf course, it would be more of like a parlor trick. Not, as a coach, I want to train people how to read greens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to encourage people that are listening. Look, I'm a big advocate of people working on putting, and whether it's the setup, which we're going to get to here in a second, because you're also a teacher, a coach. You're just not a greens reader. I mean, you're a coach on putting, all things putting, as you are to Adam Hadwin, Tom Hoagie, Mackenzie Hughes, who you mentioned, Cam Davis, who all, I think, putted pretty damn good last week. And I think you said before we came on, a cumulative of plus, 13 in strokes gained putting?
Yeah, between the 4 of them, they picked up 15 shots strokes gained putting.
There you go.
Last week at Memphis.
Yeah. So we'll get to that in a second. But back to what I was saying, I'm a big advocate of putting, and particularly greens reading. I just think it's one of the greatest opportunities for people to educate themselves. I've been diving into this, Ralph, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's based off science. You hear the word equation, and then people probably will back up a little bit. Oh, wow. Okay, I don't want to be doing all this math before it. No, well, it's pretty straightforward stuff here, folks. I mean, we're not talking about, the square root of 8 times 7 divided by pi. So it's pretty straightforward stuff, and the app kind of helps you build into that. So even if you just got a little bit of it or all of it, I don't know. I just think educating yourself on reading a green a little bit more, with a little more substance to it, it helps people make good decisions, and it helps them learn from their mistakes. So let's kind of take that now and spin it forward into just kind of all things puttings, because you're a putting coach. And you mentioned to me in a text, you said you really have like 3 pillars, right? And is that kind of your philosophy as putting as a whole, or is it the 3 pillars of the greens reading? Tell me about your 3 pillars.
Yeah, so I've got 3 things I always work on with players. This is my philosophy on putting in general. And I've had a pretty good run over the last 15 years of putting coach on the PGA Tour. And basically what I think is, if it's alignment, solid contact, and green reading. So if we've got a putt, we read it correctly, we line it up correctly, and we hit it solid, good things will happen. So those three things I always go back to as my go-to things that I'm going to work with players on. I feel like we get too caught up in general of trying to, think that the path of the putter head is the be all and end all. And, it's important because it's going to help you hit boldly. But I always go back to the fact that if you take a good player and say, hey, listen, if you read this properly, line it up where you intend to start it and hit it solid, what's going to happen? They always say, wow, that's going to be a good putt. I'm just going to good putt after good putt. So I tend to focus, as much of our energy as we can on those three things. And there's the odd time something else will come up. Obviously speed's important, but boy, speed's a lot easier if we're reading it properly, we're lining it up properly. It's when one of those falters that typically our speed starts to suffer.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, where are the breakdowns with amateur players in why they wouldn't improve with putting? Like, what are some of the top ones that you see as barriers putting doesn't get better for amateurs?
I see a lot of people ignoring their posture with putting. They might go hit a driver. They've taken some lessons. They've got great posture. They're making a good turn. They're hitting good shots, and then they go on the putting green, right? And their shoulders drop forward. They don't have enough knee flex, and they're controlling the stroke with their small muscles with their hands. Instead of having good posture, having appropriate knee flex, and controlling the putter with their shoulders. Every great putter I've worked with, it's a given that they're using their shoulders to control the stroke.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we could get our shoulders square to dress, if we could, have them open and close as a mirror image of each other, we're going to go a long way toward, and then our hands, all our hands is, the job of the hands then is just to be able to control the putter head and,
Mm-hmm.
not let the shoulders do the work. And I whenever you see a handsy player, like somebody with too much hands, it's invariably because their shoulders aren't working properly.
So when you look at the setup and some of the things that go into a good setup, I always look at the setup and putting when I work with my student and if I'm changing something to create an environment at address that when they do engage their shoulders, like the putter head has the best chance just to move on its most natural arc. Like there's nothing in the way at address that's going to disrupt this path, which should work on a very subtle arc. So are there some key things at address in addition to the posture that might lead a student down that path where you're improving the probability of the stroke just to naturally be better?
I feel like I see a lot of people who put the ball in the middle of their stance. We're trying to hit it. We're trying to hit up on the ball about a degree and a half, and so it's pretty easy to do that if the ball's slightly forward of middle. So if the ball's an inch and a half forward of our center of gravity, that'll make that upward strike. That'll put a better roll on the ball, much more probable, right? So ball position's pretty big. Keeping our shoulders square is very important. And again, kind of having good posture where your shoulders are not rounded forward. So I always think whatever if we're standing around talking to each other and that's the posture you have, then that'd be the appropriate posture to have when you're putting, right? As I see so many people with great posture when they're walking around and they go to hit a putt and they round forward and then hands dominate and it's a slippery slope because they're not hitting it solid and using the small muscles.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because like Spieth, when I watch Spieth now, like he almost looks like he's kind of rolling his shoulders back now and almost like pinching his shoulder blades, which is it's almost like he's trying to like lock himself in, and it's not the way that he is naturally, just like you were saying, positioned. And sometimes I'll see some other players do that where you see them, they almost kind of get really rigid and almost locked out, and then they make a stroke. And it's so different than obviously what Spieth has done his whole career, right? And so sometimes like the putting is not what you want it to be. And so you have to make a change to go down that path, and you hope that it helps. And so do you like that locked out look, where they're pinching the shoulder blades and they look a little more rigid?
Not really. I feel like, when people talk about good posture, we're not having tea with the king of England, where our shoulders are pinned back like that. I feel like good posture is just a good athletic position that you would be, that you feel comfortable basically in your everyday life. I feel like if we've got decent posture when we're walking around, then that's the posture we should use. I don't think we need to be artificially extending our back to create something that would, like if you're in grade 2 and the teacher tells you to sit up straight and you arch your back. That's not what we're talking about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought, along the lines of, I want to go back to Lucas for a minute. I thought Brandel Chambly on Golf Channel articulated some things quite nicely around the anchor point, right? The fulcrum. And he's not anchoring against his chest. Like, he can touch his shirt, folks. And I see some people like on Twitter say, oh, he's definitely anchoring it again. Come on. Like, it's pump the brakes here a little bit. Like, he can touch his shirt. He just can't press and anchor it against his body. And so when you look at, this, like I get into the camera here and I'm anchoring, not anchoring, but I'm using here right at the chest. I got my left elbow pointing down the line. That fulcrum up top there, and keeping that steady and not letting it move and drag seems to be the biggest difference for Lucas, right? It's more consistent, so that putter head can line back up at impact and release. And of course, when you anchor, the butt of the club is going to be anchored, right? It's into your stomach or just left of it or wherever. And so now that fulcrum is a fixed point, and so it can pass that, and really being steady with that fulcrum, right? And using your chest and that putter head passing consistently. And of course, with Lucas, with no flitch, now you get that more repeatable strike, and the ball starts coming off the line more consistently. And really, that at the end of the day, like, that is one of the most important things in putting, right? Is that fulcrum being steady, that putter head coming in, and then just passing it and hitting it in the center of the face. Yeah,
like when we're hitting a putt with a 35-inch putter, we're swinging around our around a fixed center. Like we don't want our body to be moving around too much. We're going to be swinging around basically around our spine. Now when we've got a long putter, I kind of like what you were doing there in the video. But I always feel like with a long putter, there's two different ways of doing it. One would be to keep that fulcrum steady and just let your right hand take over and really not make much movement with your shoulders, right? Because and then the other one would just be to lock everything in and control it with our shoulders. So you look at a guy like Adam Scott, who's a great putter now, long putter. Every putt he hits looks like it's got a chance to go in. It looks awesome. He'd be an example of somebody who's very rigid, no, controlling with his shoulders. You do see some people who with a long putter, because that fulcrum is like you mentioned, is stationary. You can just control it more with your right hand, which is effective too. And I feel like if people tried a long putter, if they hit 10 putts with each way, they know which way is best suited for them.
Right. And you can't be, it's not a rock. Like, you don't, like, the one thing about that long putter is you're not going to be rocking your shoulders, because now that fulcrum's all over the place. So it really does it really does. When I practice with it, I feel my shoulders working the right way. It kind of helps me feel like I've got that little mini pivot without, backing up one way or the other. Because up here, remember, you can really feel that. And you don't see that with Lucas, or Adam. Their head's very steady, and particularly coming through, they don't back it up. And if they backed it up, then they would catch it low on the face and, all those things. So yeah, it's interesting, right? It's just amazing that where he has now got to with that. It's flip the switch, the new chapter. There's no flitch. The ball's coming off the face, repeatable. And he's like, his confidence is through the roof, and he wins. And he wins back to back. All right, let's go back to the greens rating real quick, and then I'll let you go, because I know you're going. But when you look at the most common mistakes, even at the professional level, I go back to the story that Marcus told a couple weeks ago about Lee when he first used your greens rating system, and it was one of the first ones, about a 40-footer, and they did it, and it was telling him to aim here. And so he aimed there and he hit it and it went in. And he turned around and he looked at Marcus and he was like, okay, let's move it in. Let's see what else is going on here. And so what they've learned through this is that, Lee tended to underread, in particularly downhill putts. Like, he just wasn't playing enough break, especially downhill. That's one of the things that I see when I work with students. They tend to maybe underread in general, but especially downhill, they're just not playing enough break.
Yeah, it's 100%. So the main thing I see is people underreading left to right putts.
Okay.
And, so if you're a right-handed player, you got a left to right putt, you've underread it, it misses on the low side, and you're like, Ralph, I'm pushing all my left to righters. I'm like, yeah, you're not pushing all your left to righters. You're actually hitting them solid. You're just not reading them correctly. Downhill putts, yeah, you're right, it's tricky. Downhill putts break more. They've got a slower initial ball speed. It takes longer for the ball to stop rolling. Gravity has more time to take effect. Basically, for every 1% downhill, it's going to be 5% more break. I always tell people, hey, you know what? If you got a downhiller, if you're recognizing the fact that it's downhill, it's probably 2% downhill. It's like 10% more break. And 10% is an easy kind of thing. Like if I always ask people like, hey, show me 10% of the length of your putter, they always, are pretty quick to point out, 3-4 inches on their putter. And they're not doing the math on that. They're just saying, okay, it's downhiller. I'm going to add 10%. Okay, wow, it's a super severe downhiller. Okay, now I'll throw 20% in. But now at least we've got a guideline that we can work towards.
Right.
I don't think our brain works well. Like, okay, I'll add a little bit more, or I'll add a little less, or I'll, hit it off the toe of my putter and, hope that works. Like Max Homa had I don't know if you remember the interview Max Homa gave. It was priceless. They're like, hey, so did like a downhill putt, like, do you hit off the toe or anything? He's like, no, I just kind of don't. I just hit a little softer, right? Like, so, I feel like there's all these things that people came up with. I mean, don't get me started on plumb bobbing, but that people have come up with, and we're trying to give people some guidelines that they can work around. And one of the things I'm most proud of is they got like a little practice plan in the app. 73 putts. You can spread it out over 4 days. Every person that's gone through this has gotten, the feedback I get's, incredible.
So in the app, there's a practice plan. You're telling them what length putt, downhill, uphill, right to left to right. Tell us a bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, again, we're coaches, right? So I don't want to just come up with a trick. I want people to actually get better and lower their handicap and shoot lower scores and win money from their friends. So I came up with a little practice plan. You can do it part of your warm up. Basically, it's like 17 putts a day. And if you hit these 17 putts, it's different from day 1, day 2, day 3, but it's 17 putts. I've got it right in there, where to hit them from, how exactly to do it. And then we've got like a maintenance plan in there where you can, once you get the hang of it, you can start doing it, 15 putts before, just before a round of golf. You're probably going to hit 15 putts before a round of golf anyways. So you might as well do it in a way that's organized, and it's going to help you to, make more putts out in the golf course.
It's fascinating. It really is. I love it. I know how amateurs can think sometimes out there on the golf course, and some of my students and my audience here of the podcast, these are serious golfers, and I have a beat on like where most need help. The majority, and everybody's different. I get that, but I just feel like greens rating in general, man, I would put the 80%, 85% number of players need to drastically improve in reading a green, right? Like that's honestly, in all transparency, I think I would put myself into that category. I think I've gotten better at it. I don't play a lot of golf anymore, but I still feel like there's a lot more room for me to improve. And like I said, I've been diving into this as well, and I'm excited just for my own game. But when you hear you got to do the math, you got to do an equation. Sometimes, whoa, I don't know. I don't know if this seems a little complicated. It really isn't. I mean, it's not. And like the app does a good job. I love how you explain the phases, like phase 1, and then phase 2, you pick, and then you're kind of working them into it. And really with just a little bit of effort and education through this, like you'll start having tools to more educatedly, if that's a word, make a decision on where you're going to play it. And okay, I'm going to play it here, and here's why, rather than I'm going to play it here and hit it. And it broke a lot more than I thought. And like, man, I have no idea why. So I love I love the education of greens reading. And I think I genuinely think it will help more people make more putts. And at the end of the day, you're making more putts. Your score that's linear. It goes straight down.
Yeah, it goes straight down. And I didn't mention this. Our whole system is based on basically 12 inches past the hole speed, right? So we're going to use that as a constant. And, I do a lot of work with stats. Driving the golf ball is very important, but boy, you never see anybody fist pump after a drive. And you see lots of people fist pumping after putts, right? And if we start making our 5-footers or 7-footers, chipping's a little easier, frees up from the fairway. Putting well is important. You make an 8-footer, you walk to the next tee. How do you feel versus missing that 8-footer?
Oh, I lost him. Yep, we lost him there. All right, no worries there. That was great. I mean, that was fantastic. I'll finish with this. With the podcast today. Scotty Scheffler needs to do something different with his putting. It's time. This is going on way too long. He is way too talented of a player to be where he is. And Scotty needs to, one second, he's trying to come back. Needs to come back. I think after this year, I don't think he needs to do it right now. And maybe he doesn't do it before the Ryder Cup. But Scotty needs to do something. He needs another set of eyes looking at his putting. And I've been talking to some people that are out there close to the situation, and they say he just won't. He won't do it. He's stubborn, and most of these players are stubborn. And Scotty's a great guy, and I love Scotty Scheffler. But my God, this is going on too long. I mean, this is insanity at this point. It's not getting better. And so, get with his team, get with Randy Smith, and figure out who would make the most sense to come in and look at his putting, whether it's his greens reading or whether it's his setup or whether it's this or that. I mean, whatever the case may be, and figure out what which way you need to go. I don't think we're going to have to reinvent the wheel with him, but something needs to happen here, I think, in the offseason. New set of eyes to get that turned around, because let's face it, he's one of the best ball strikers in the world. He is the best ball striker in the world, probably. His short game is insane, and he should be winning these tournaments if he was just a reasonable putter, and he's not. So anyway, that's that. Great podcast here today with Ralph Bauer, and actually he's right here. Let's bring him back in here. Hold on a second. Here you are, Ralph. I lost you there for a second. Here he is.
Yeah, no, sorry about that.
So, yeah, we're kind of wrapping it up here, and give us a few parting thoughts here on greens reading, about your app, because I know some of my listeners would love to participate.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So the app's in the it's in the Apple Store. It's got a free 7-day trial. So if you want to try it for free, no obligation to do it. We're pretty excited about it. It's just been a lot of fun helping people putt better and taking one of the variables out. It's been fun for me because I started coaching full-time PGA Tour in 2008, and I basically try to take everything I've learned, from working with the best players in the world for that length of time and put it down to a super simple system to help everyone, putt better. So pretty excited about that. And Travis, thank you very much for having me on. I'm a big fan of yours. And yeah, it'd be amazing. Looking forward to doing a golf school with you. Week of RSM, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll do it. RSM week, which I think is like the third week of November, right before Thanksgiving. We'll do it here in Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra, probably on that Friday. And we'll do a school in the morning. We'll do a school in the afternoon. Maybe we'll do a clinic of sorts in the studio that night, have some fun. So yeah, I'm super excited to meet you in person and spend some time with that. Ralph Bauer, check him out at Tour Reed Golf. I'm telling you, it's worth it. Thanks for being here. Back tomorrow, Keith Stewart on a Tuesday.